I would like to add a comment from these previous 2 days of the celebration. So I was very glad to see not only women, but also men. And we got one guy coming to the registration desk yesterday saying, this was so awesome. I learned so much today. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. So it's really good to see both genders being involved in the conference. And at the career fair, we also had a 10-month-old kid join us with his mom running around. So we have all kinds of women encouragers. So ACM-W has both great women and men that really make a difference for women in computing. And the issues that a woman in computing faces are complex and obvious. Far from obvious. So there's really not a silver bullet. There's no easy solution for this situation. So instead, what we have to do is look at, study different factors in many different settings and slowly gain a deeper understanding of the situation. Why are there less women than men in computing? Well, we can take a closer look at the education in the field and what factors influence women's decisions when choosing a career or staying in a study program. So in order to do this, we need professionals who are experienced both in computing and in education. And our next speaker has experience in both industry and academia, as she comfortably combines doing research in human-computer interaction and software engineering with doing research in computing education. She serves in different leadership roles, of which I would like to highlight her volunteering to be the Gender Equality Officer at the Department of IT in Uppsala University. In this role, and as faculty advisor of the local ACM-W student chapter, Åsa Kajander works for the empowerment of women in computing. And I know, because I'm one of the examples. I met Åsa less than 2 years ago, and her support and advice had made me the professional I am today. I was one of the many students who hadn't realized her potential yet. Despite being close to completing a master's program in computer engineering, and after a bachelor's in the same area, I didn't feel like I belonged in the field. And 2 years ago, I wondered, how is a computing professional? What kind of person works in this area? Perhaps someone like me, but it doesn't really look like it. And then I started collaborating with Åsa. I won't say all that I learned, because she will talk about it in a moment. But allow me to mention that I not only learned how to work in academia effectively, I also learned how you build your career, not necessarily to guarantee success, but to be, for sure, a great professional. And success will eventually follow that, if that's what you want. I learned about professional integrity, and I learned overall that my place was in computing. I'm just one of the many examples of people who have been positively impacted by Åsa's work. You could hear other stories from people involved in the Swedish healthcare system or the education system, which are areas that Åsa has contributed to at the European and international level. As a professional, she's excellent, and as a women encourager, she could be the definition of the term. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Åsa Kajander.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you, Virginia, for your nice introduction. As you could hear, I'm not here in my role as a researcher. I can assure you that I am the future Nobel Prize winner in my area, if it wasn't for the fact that we don't have a Nobel Prize in computer science. But I was invited to give a talk about how it is to be a female in a male-dominated area, such as computing. How do you manage to be a good professional in this setting? What is it like? What problems do we encounter? And I would also like to say ways in which you can really enjoy it, to really thrive and flourish and really be yourself in this male-dominated world. I'm an associate professor of computer science. My research areas are in computer science education and in human-computer interaction. I am the Gender Equality Officer at the Department of IT. That means that I have 10% of my time to work with gender equality We work with gender equality in a very structured way. We have a yearly plan with 10 to 15 different action bullets. The areas of these action bullets are defined by the main university gender equality plan. So we do excellent work, but change is really slow in this field. Today, my message is that perseverance and grit is related to success or being who you want to be. But as a woman in this field, you don't need just the normal way of looking at grit. You need another kind of grit. And I'll be talking about what this is and why this is so. I want you to enjoy the ride in this field. I want you to be yourselves, and I want you to to like it. It is a great area to work in. So how do you succeed in the area of computer science? I did a research study on personality traits. This research was really based on other areas of research where you've noticed that in any area of research, it is most important to have a grit, to hang in there. This is a picture of my two boys, and he's really hanging in there, trying to climb up in the waterfall. You need to have this kind of grit to be successful in any area. And my research has shown that it's valid in computer science too. So grit is more important than IQ. It's more important than talent. It's more important than being an extrovert or introvert. This is the most important personality trait, and you need to work on this. When times get tough, when you find it difficult and you don't really know how to solve the situation, you need to keep on trying. Grit also includes getting the help you need to be able to do what you want to do. One should note that this is perhaps easier for women. I went to a talk the other week. It was a PhD thesis that was based on the norms of men. In the male boys, for example, this boy, this is my son, he has the idea that the most talented people don't have to work at all to succeed. True talent is when you don't need to work at all. I think the PhD thesis was called something like the effortless achiever. And this is a norm that boys struggle with. And we have these boys in computer science as well. Those who tell their mates that I didn't really spend any time doing this, I just solved it. These are your classmates. These are the men you work with who tell you that despite the fact that they spent 0 time on this assignment, they did it. And you should be aware that this is a norm and a way for them to handle their masculinity. And it doesn't have to be true. Maybe they spent all night doing the task. When I started off as a programmer, it was in industry. I took a course in computer science in industry. The course lasted for 6 months. It was full-time. We did pair programming. It was in the early ages of extreme programming. So I was the one sitting at the keyboard, and next to me was this man. He was the effortless achiever, I thought. A few months later, after a few glasses of wine, he told me that at night, when I went home, he stayed at work doing the programming exercises because he didn't understand anything when we were working together. But I thought that he just knew things. He admitted this after a few months, but I wouldn't have known if he wouldn't have told me. These are our colleagues, and what they think is their way of being a man. As a woman in this field, you need another kind of grit too. This is related to you being a woman in a male-dominated field. You can lose confidence in who you are and lose track of what you're doing. Like, for example, in academia, there's lots of competitiveness. You're supposed to compete when it comes to research funding, etc. And you can lose track of who you want to be in this situation. I'm not always convinced that I want to stay in computer science. And you need to force yourself to see what's good when things get tough. Okay, we'll move into some of the background here. Sweden is one of the most equal countries in the world. We have a culture that's based on a firm belief that men and women should share power and influence. We have an extensive welfare system that makes it possible for men and women to stay at home with children. However, there is still quite some room for improvement. In the Global Gender Gap report from 2014, Sweden was ranked the 4th country in the world. The first country was Iceland, the second one was Finland, third one was Norway. So the Nordic countries are up at the top. Both mothers and fathers in Sweden are entitled to payment when they stay at home with their children. But despite this, we can see that only 24% of the days that are paid to men. The rest are paid to women. So it's not at all equal. In our language, we have a new word. We excluded him and her and created a new one that says it's a neutral. In Swedish, it's called hen. And this is really used in official documents. So we work quite a lot with gender equality. And this is how it looks in numbers. 60% of university students are women. 50% of the PhD students are women. But then we go down to 24% of professors are women. So we have a problem here. What happened to all the good girls? What happened to all the talented people that did not continue? In the corporate world, we have larger problems, I think. 16% of board members in Sweden are women. There is a new law coming up, however. The new government have decided that if we don't raise it to above 40% in 2016, they will force us. This is what they did in Iceland a couple of years ago. They decided that in all the boards, 40% of the board members need to be women. That made my colleague in Iceland a member of several boards now. And I think she's doing a fantastic job. But of course, she finds it problematic that she is elected just because she's a woman. At the same time, maybe this way of doing laws is one way of making the change. So then I'm talking about something about being the token figure. This is a token figure means that you're the one who's the odd person. You're the one who's not like everyone else. This makes it very risky as a woman because people don't see you as a competent individual. There is a risk that you will be in charge of social things in this situation too. You become the mother of the group, and you do not feel like you're belonging. You feel like you're not one of the guys. I think that most men in any country don't think about how it affects them to be the norm. How does it affect you that you're the white male here? They don't have the answer. They think that it's neutral to be the white male, but it's not at all. We need to ask them this question, make them aware, and question what the norm is. Being the token figure can be very, very explicit in some situations. This is a table after a conference in Madrid last year. It was lots of men, computer scientists, and me. I'm down at the left there, female associate professor. I was sitting to a male associate professor and a male lecturer, and on the other side, there was a wife sitting. And we were discussing and talking, and they were discussing research questions and how to get funding. They were also discussing future EU projects, etc. After half an hour, the wife gets up, looks at her husband, the male associate professor, and asks him or tells him, maybe we should change seats so that you can sit next to the important people. Yeah. So it's very obvious in this situation. You can interpret it in many ways. One was that I'm very beautiful. So she was jealous. I don't think so. She was really beautiful too. I think this is something else. She just assumes that since I'm a woman, I'm not important. And I also wrote the titles here. Lecturer is a title that is below associate professor. So I was one of the most qualified people in this group. This was not about competence. This was about something else. So how did I handle the situation? Embarrassingly enough, I didn't do anything. I didn't know what to do. What was I supposed to do? The male lecturer sitting at my right, he looked completely stunned, very, very surprised. What we were supposed to do in this situation? So we just changed seats and pretended like nothing had happened. Yeah, this is the situation. This is something that you could read up upon, stereotype threat. There's lots of research on stereotype threat. This research shows that in situations where we feel that we risk confirming negative stereotypes, we perform worse than usual. That is, in this exam situation, if it's an exam, they've done studies on male students from Stanford in mathematics, saying to them before the exam, to half of the group, they said that you're going to be compared to a group that's known for being very good at mathematics. It was Asian men. We'll compare you to Asian men. And the group that thought that they would be compared, they were like told about the norm. They performed much worse. They know that if you do programming exams in rooms that are covered with pictures of games, of programming, like gaming games, male-dominated games, they perform worse. Stereotype threats is when you fulfill the norm. And we do this quite a lot. I also know that Virginia has done studies on students, and the students have a tendency to say that if I get stuck, I go and ask one of the boys or one of the men. They know better. Many girls say, I don't know this. So when you have this feeling that I don't really belong here, research has shown that we do worse. We're not capable of solving the problems that we have in front of us. So this is really a problematic situation that we need to handle. We need to know these cues in the environment to make us aware of them, and of course, trying to remove them. I've been to universities where they have pictures on the wall of faculty. It was in America, and most of the pictures, or all the pictures of faculty working as teachers, were men. All of them were men. There was a woman now and then in the picture, and that woman was the housekeeper or the one in charge of the kitchen. And of course, that made me uncomfortable. I've also taught classes with students where we work as a group of teachers, 5 or 6 teachers, and this year I was the only woman, and the students were to present their project after a week. In their presentation, they had all the male teachers with photos they found on Facebook. These are the faculty teaching the course. They excluded me. I was the main responsible teacher. I was not in the image. They just assumed that since I'm a woman, I'm not the teacher of the course. I must be someone else. Depressing, isn't it? This is Australia in 10 years ago, Brisbane. World Computing Congress. Lots of men. And they were standing on stage, like I'm doing now, saying, we have had long meetings discussing the best paper, the best presentation, the greatest potential, best PhD student, you know. I mean, some of you have been there. They have all these prizes. And then they start naming the winners. And they go, and the winner is, and then it's Don or whoever. And these are the prizes. And the prizes are ties. Yeah. I don't think they had any option. I wonder what they would have done if it was a woman. They didn't even think about it. And of course, in this situation, I feel like I don't belong. I'm not wearing a tie. I don't belong there. That's just a fact. Of course. Then I have this feeling quite often. I'm not worthy of this success. This is called the imposter syndrome. Any day now, people will realize that I'm a fake. Any day now, they'll see through me, understanding that I don't know what I'm talking about. This is one of the feelings that you get. Yeah. And we need to work with this feeling, because of course we belong there. And of course we're worthy of success. That's just a fact. But it is a bit difficult in situation. This is also a situation. I'm married to a computer scientist. His name is Mats Daniels, and he is more senior than I am. And we were in Australia, and they were introducing us on stage because we were guests. We have written about 20 research papers together. We have worked together for 15 years at least. And people here know this. And when we enter the stage, they introduce us as, this is the well-known and fantastic and blah, 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 Mats Daniels, and his beautiful wife. Yeah. So what happened to my research? What happened to who I am? Okay, my husband, he told me that it would not be possible for them to say it the other way around. This is the well-known Åsa Kajander and his beautiful husband, because he's too ugly. But I don't know. This made me really laugh. You can also get this imposter syndrome in tiny situations at work, when you feel like you don't belong. And sometimes you get help. This is from a female colleague of mine. I got this enormous research grant. And then I was told by her, a supporter, that you don't think that you'll be this lucky next time. So she minimizes my efforts, thinking it's connected to luck. And this tags to my imposter feeling, I don't belong. It was pure luck. I just got it by chance. And of course, it is always it's connected to luck, and it's connected to chance, all the possibilities you have in life. But I don't get more possibilities than anyone else. And if you take that chance, that's the competence. Yeah. There are lots of norms related to professions, and there are lots of norms related to computer science as a profession too. Now and then it happens to me that people don't understand who I am. I did a presentation at a medical congress last year, and I'm in charge of Sweden's largest e-health project. It has got 18 senior researchers. I'm the project manager, and I was doing a presentation about my project. And the people meeting me in the door, they know for sure that someone is coming to present this project. But still, the person looks at me saying, okay, so who are you? Are you the administrator or the secretary, or what are you doing here? Yeah, I'm like, oh, I am the project manager. I am the doctor that's supposed to be here talking. So he just assumed that I must be someone else. He couldn't by any chance be me who runs this project. That's really strange. It happens all the time. I don't look like the typical scientist. I did this experiment. I asked my children, I have 4 children. I asked the youngest ones to draw a picture of a scientist. Who do you think they drew a picture of? It was not me. It was a man in a white coat. So there are lots of norms that we need to struggle with related to this. There are quite a lot of research in this area too. This is a study made by the Swedish Research Council, VR, last year. It was a qualitative study when they observed groups of people discussing applications. And they wrote it up, so there is a report online, and you can also look at movies where they do a presentation of this. So they could see that when talking about the same phenomena, like the first example here, that a woman who has done lots of things in a very large area, she is seen as her competence is sprawling. It's spread all over the place without any directions. But when talking about a man who's got the same phenomena in his CV or in his application, the man is described as being very broad in his competence. The very opposite then, if you have a woman who's really an expert in a specific field, they use the word narrow about her, and if it's a man, they say that he has cutting-edge expertise. The third example then, if you have a large network of people and you have collaborated a lot internationally and you're a woman, in these groups they could see that these women were described as not being able to work independently. If you're a man with the same kind of network, the same kind of publication lists spread all over the world with lots of people that you collaborate with, then you have a good network. And these are judgments that show up in the amount of money you get for doing research. And this is fundamental for researchers. This makes it unequal. They also looked at the percentages of funding given to women and funding given to men. And these numbers are really difficult to interpret because there are lots of factors affecting how you look at it. But in any way of looking at it, they could see that women get less funding. That's just a fact. This is quite depressing. So this is another situation connected to imposter syndrome. This is one of the most horrible situations I've ever been in. I was a PhD student. I had my second child, and the child was in Sweden and I was in Scotland. And he was 6 months old and I was breastfeeding. Do you know what happens if you breastfeed and leave your kid at home? You get enormous, yeah. So I was standing with my supervisor in a pub, and this man comes up to me and to my colleague, a girl, and he really says in front of everyone, looking at me, looking at my, saying, I can really understand why you have chosen these people as your PhD students. It took me weeks to recover. I didn't know how to handle this at all. I was completely shocked. Why did he do this? I had no idea. I still am. And when I meet him 15 years later at conferences, I don't know where to look. It's like, okay. I don't know how to handle him. I wish I knew the answer here. But if someone really treats me this bad, I have a very, it's a difficult situation to be very professional after this. Yeah, I never use anything, any clothing that shows anything. So this was not due to me being very dressed in a specific way. It was due to me having very big at this point. Yeah, really difficult situation. One of the things that we all need to handle is norms related to family life. These are my kids, 13, 11, 8, and 3. I do blonde boys with brown eyes. That's the shape. And of course, there are differences all over the world related to this area. Some research even suggests that it's at the point when you get children that you really understand and see the norms that we have in society. Because being a mother or a father are really connected to stereotypes. It's really, 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 really very much stronger than you can ever imagine. So at home, I am the mother. My kids, now they've been to womENcourage yesterday, at least 2 of them, so now they know what I'm doing. But before that, they didn't know at all. And I also remember when I defended my PhD, my family was invited. My mother very gladly said, "Wow, you really know things." Yeah. We should really be aware that one of the parts of this being a woman, having a career, is that people will tell you that childcare will traumatize your children for life. The best way to handle children is to be at home, and this is not true. I've been told things like this. Not like your kids who grow up in an abnormal family. Yeah, of course, I'm not a very traditional mother. This is my youngest. When he was 1, he had been in 9 different countries, different computer science conferences all over the world. And of course, that has made him the person he is today. But it's made him into a very social person. He doesn't really bother about people and languages and appearances. And he loves men. Especially men with beard, he loves them. Most kids love women, but he's so used to being in a male-dominated area that he loves men. There's also this norm that you can work hard and be a career woman, but your children should have a very traditional upbringing. And there should be no situation where your children are treated in a different way. This, of course, is just an impossible norm. When I was a kid, my mother stayed at home until we were 6 or 7 years old. And after that, she started working half-time. And I remember after school, we went by her work to visit. This is the norm. And of course, I've stayed at home with my kids. I have. But I also try to work and try to find a balance. And this is the good thing about all this is that we can do things to change. This is where your grit comes. Or lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg says in her book and in her TED Talk. We are society. We create the norms. We can change the norms. Norms are changeable. Through our way of talking, through our way of supporting each other, and to think about diversity. It's really important that we try to be the people that we want to be. Life is short. Make it fun. Computer science is really a good area to be in. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the perfect mother who's, in Sweden you're supposed to have homemade bread, homemade cinnamon buns. You're supposed to be present at all time. Or do you want to be one of the men, one of the guys? This is also one way of handling it. Don't be a woman at all. Try to not dress as a woman, look like a man, act as a man, be one of the guys. Do you want to be envious of other people, or do you want to support them? Yeah. Who do you want to be? Don't use the harassment techniques. Have you read about harassment techniques? There are 5 of them. Men use them, women use them, and the most dangerous thing to use them, the dangerous way of using them, is to using them on yourself. Watch out for that. Be your own supporter. Don't start off by saying, I don't know this. Start off by saying, in my experience, this is. Try to flip it around. This is also, this is a stressor in life, to have additional identities, I've called it. It's when you look at other people on Facebook, you look at 100 people, and you have the impression that everyone is exercising 6 days a week. They are perfect wives. They do cinnamon rolls, and they have children, and they have a career, and they are fantastic in every aspect of life. They have got it all. This is additional identities. You put everything that everyone puts on Facebook and think that this is my life, I should be like this. And this is not true. Obviously not. Facebook is not the truth about people. Try to really, really, really understand this. Don't try to be best at everything you do. Try to be aware of gender stereotypes and try to treat people with respect, regardless of gender or nationality or age. We can create equal opportunities for others through being very equal ourselves. Try to make your colleagues aware of gender equalities too. Try to make them avoid this kind of language. But this is difficult. Yesterday I had a Skype or Hangout, with Google Hangouts meeting with a student, and in the background on the wall was a naked woman. And this is one of these embarrassing moments in life. I didn't really know what to do. And to be honest, I didn't do anything. I didn't really know what to do. And of course, I should have told this student, by the way, I don't appreciate naked women on the walls. Could you please remove that? Yeah. Maybe I should do that next time if the student still has the picture. Find your networks of people. I have found large networks of people. This is, I took a leadership course a few years ago. It's the best things I've done. It's one of the best things I've done. And I still have contact with these people. These are managers, these women. It was a leadership course. They are managers in industry. And we meet and we talk and we discuss. We discuss how you're supposed to relate to different situations. So find your networks. You can have a network in your family too, your husband or your wife. Make it someone who supports you, or your mother or father. This is really an interesting aspect. Find your balance between work and family life. Most jobs that we have in computer science are very flexible. I read a PhD thesis about flexible work, and it made me understand that it has its advantages, but it also has some disadvantages. First of all, many of the jobs that you have in computer science are announced as flexible. But what does it mean? There are two obviously different interpretations of this. One is that you need to be flexible so that you work towards the needs of the organization. So flexibility towards the needs of the organization. The other one is flexibility towards the needs of your family or your own needs. That's the other one. Most jobs in computer science are possible to handle together with other activities. Like you can if you have a deadline, you can work the weekend, and they take Monday off if you want to. You can choose for yourself, and this is very much an advantage. But this PhD study also showed that if you have this kind of job, it's also a stressor, especially for women, because then you need to set the boundaries yourself. It is you who decide when you work and not work. It's you who look at your family and need to say that this is more important. If you have a job when you have set boundaries of when to work and not to work, that's much easier. I think this area needs more discussion in organizations, and maybe we need to help each other to set up the borders. Is it really important that I go on a business trip next week, or can I stay at home? It's really up to me in many situations in computer science, and that's a stressor, of course. This is one of the please come back to Sweden in the winter images that I brought. This is the lake outside my house with a very Swedish kind of sleigh, or what you kick it and you make it really flow over the ice. And this is with my 3-year-old. One of the things that we need to work with as women, with women leaders, is this problem. Have a tendency to dislike female leaders. Both men and women dislike female leaders. And of course we need to change this. I mean, why do we do this to the female leaders? And the other way around. If you're a female leader and you end up being disliked, realize that this is really a part of the norm. This is a part of the culture of being a leader. You're criticized for everything you do. And don't spend time mourning about that, because it doesn't help you. But we need to treat our female leaders better. We need to be really aware. If we criticize women in leadership positions, why do we criticize them? Would we criticize a man for doing the same thing? At least reflect upon the situation once more before you do the judgment. This is one of the most serious slides. Watch out so you don't burn out. I've been in this field for 25 years, and I know at least 20, 30 people who's burned out. This is a true problem. It's very easy to get overloaded. Maybe it's because it's so fun, I don't know. It's really, really interesting. You get recognition, you get rewarded. People like what you do if you produce good results. But watch out so that it doesn't become too much. You have to ask yourself this question over and over and over again. Is this really what I need to do? And it's really hard to say yes and no. It's really, really, really hard to say no. When do you say no? And to whom? And in what situations? What is really essential? What is not essential? Maybe good enough is a good level for you at this point. Be more selfish and egocentric sometimes. So really, watch out. So what are the symptoms when we burn out? It's that you sleep less. So if you sleep less than normal, you need to watch out. And if that happens weeks in a row, you need to stop. Other stresses are loss of control in any aspect. There's a famous research theory that's about work environment that says that the 3 factors is how you interpret your feeling, how you feel about control in your life, in the situation. If you have the competence needed, and here we have the imposter syndrome. If you feel like you have the competence needed for the work, if you are in control of the situation, if you know what you're expected to deliver, at what quality or not. The other one is support. What kind of support do you have from management, from colleagues, from the computer systems, from networks, etc. And here ACM Europe has a really important role to play. And the third aspect is how you feel about the requirements expected of you. Requirements in the form of how much you deliver, at what speed, at what quality, etc., etc. The interesting part about this model is that it says that requirements in itself is not a problem if you have the support needed and that you feel in control of your situation. So high requirements, like for example doing a PhD, does not have to be a stressor if you feel like you're in control and that you understand the requirements and know what you're supposed to deliver, and have the support and needed. But don't think this doesn't happen to me. This could happen to you. I've seen it happen to many. I'll wrap this keynote up by mentioning another kind of grit, and that is working in difficult projects, because you always need to try to strive for the goals of the organization. I have a tendency to collect difficult projects. One is this. gender equality work in Saudi Arabia. I work in a gender equality project with Saudi Arabia since a year. The woman in the picture is me. I did not have to wear this complete cover. This was just me trying it out. But even in this work, the men visiting the male campus asked themselves, how can men work without women? This was a man coming from Sweden asking me, how can men work without women? Who would take care of the flowers? Who would make the coffee? I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. Yeah. So this is another kind of grit. How do you deal with this situation? In Saudi Arabia, I had 3 different roles depending on the situation. The first role I loved. It was the rock star role. I've never had that role. I did autographs, a few hundred. They took photos, numerous photos. I was the famous person coming there. I'm not that famous, to be honest. So it was really strange. The second role I got was the role I have here in Sweden, where people listen to you when you have something good to say, and sometimes they don't listen to you even though you do have something to say. That's the normal situation. The third role was completely invisible. That was a new role. Because for some, with respect to me, they don't want to shake my hand or engage in a discussion with me, because that would be bad for me as a woman. Yeah. So we had all situations. This is me with my computer, with all the men. The feeling was they were all very aware of gender equality. They knew more about this than I did when I came there. They all wanted to work for a better education for women, working hard for it too. So the goal of this project is to make the curriculum better for them and to improve it when it comes to communication with the teachers. They had different ways of communicating, and I noticed that too, because they use social media in a way that we don't do in Sweden. So they use social media with me as a teacher. The female students met their male teachers for the first time when I was there. So some of them were whispering to each other, "He didn't look that old on Facebook." They've never seen them before. So this is what we do here. We really try to make it better for them. So this is an example of grit, where you have a difficult project with a difficult goal, where you got cultural differences and also differences in the project group when it comes to what we're working for. If you're working with men that think that women at the workplace should do the watering of the flowers, then you really have a problem. So remember, grit is most important for us. But in other ways than you might expect. We need to support and help each other, both men and women. We need to work on this together. I mean, it's not men that suppress women. We all do. I do it with myself. So it's not men against women at all. Enjoy the ride in computer science. It's a fantastic field. Things change slowly, but they do change. And be happy to be in the field. I'll end with a quote from Marie Curie. We must have perseverance and above all confidence in ourselves. Questions and comments?
Thanks, Osa, very much.
I'm Adriana Wild from Southampton University, and I'm fascinating. Really enjoyed your talk from your personal perspective and from your experience as a researcher. It's just 2 curious things that I really like you to expand a bit more. One is the statistics you showed about Sweden's gender equality. I wonder if that was HE-wide, I mean higher education-wide, or it's computer science is following the same kind of pattern. And the other question is, I'm just a bit curious about the harassment techniques that you mentioned, and that you said that don't do that.
Harassment
could you elaborate a little bit, because I'm a bit curious about that. Thank you.
The numbers are general for Sweden as a nation. I've seen the numbers for Uppsala University when it comes to the science subjects, and then computer science is it's the area at Uppsala University who's got least women. Biology, for example, the number of students is more than 50 out of 60, but then the slope is really, really steep here. When you come to senior professors, full professors, it's really a steep one. When it comes to IT, then we are the lowest. I think we've got 25% of women study students, but then the slope is not that big. So we have almost the equal number of PhD students and faculty. It is still a slope, but not as steep. So the situation is not the same in computer science. The harassment techniques, I don't know the name of the person, maybe someone in the audience does. She has boiled it down to 5 harassment techniques. One is making women or men. Harassment techniques is about people treating people and the ways of treating people that is not very good. The first one is making them invisible. You don't see them, you don't hear them. The second one is making them look funny. The third one is, I don't remember them by heart. But it's really, they're called harassment techniques. And if you mailed me, I could send you the link to the full. It's really an interesting read. Thank you very much for the question.
Hello, I'm Linda Hardman. I work at the Centre for Mathematics and Computer Science in Amsterdam. I too have survived a professional husband and 2 children and thoroughly enjoyed it all. But my question to you is about the childcare stage. So my husband and I, we each worked 4 days a week officially from when the kids were born until they reached high school. So I was curious about what your husband did when the kids were are young.
Yeah, I've been married once. The first husband, he took time off from work at the same time as there was a world championship in soccer on TV. The second one is a much better one, and we've shared it 50%. But we've shared it in a way that's quite different. So now I can work as much as I can Monday and Tuesday, and then I know that I can work as early as I want to Thursday morning. But the other days I need to be at home at 9 and pick up at 4. So we've divided it by the days of the week.
So does the state or the institution support this flexible working, or do you have to fight to make these arrangements?
I work at a department where we really have lots of freedom. As long as you do your job, you can do it. You can work 5 o'clock Thursday morning if you want to. It's not a problem. I need to do my teaching. That's the only thing that I really have a set schedule for. And I need to show up there when I do teaching. That's most important.
Yeah, hi, this is Bimlesh from Singapore, and thoroughly enjoyed your talk, and I suddenly feel I'm not alone. I have 25 years in teaching, similar to your experience. My question is, how do you handle things? I mean, do you have experience in class, like you have male students and female students? And anything you want to comment on, how do you handle, or any specific situation you want to share?
Sometimes I feel like a complete failure when it comes to how I handle it, like when this situation with me excluded from the slide of faculty, teachers. I don't really know how to handle it. One thing that happens to me in class is I get these things, especially from male students. I mostly have male students. They raise their hand as if they had a question, but it's not a question that they ask me, it's more a way of saying, I really know this area, and it's complicated, and they use technical words. And then they end up with looking at me as if, but you didn't know this, did you? And they act if they have a question for me, but they don't. They only want to tell me that they know things I don't know. And then I try to be very generous, saying, I'm glad that you knew this and that you shared the experience with all of us. Maybe we could talk more about it afterwards. Or I try to be very generous when it happens.
Have you heard of any study about the teaching feedback which male students give to female professors? Or?
I know that research shown that if you want high course evaluations, you should be a man. Yeah, that research is conclusive in this area. Female teachers get lower course evaluations than men, unfortunately, in computer science.
My question is how to work on imposter syndrome. Being aware of it didn't work for me.
Could you put
Yeah.
Once more, please.
Your suggestion to work on imposter syndrome. Being aware of it didn't work. It didn't work for me, and also the norms making it even worse. You have any suggestion how to work on it?
Yeah. How do you work with the imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
When you get this idea in your head, I'm not worthy of this. I don't belong here. You need to tell yourself, yes, I am. I'm a good person. I did my best. I'm really worthy of this success. And you can help each other. When we start off by saying, I don't know this, you tell them, yes, you do. You look very competent. And I always try to do that, really. I did it this morning with someone who's sitting in the audience, saying, yes, you look very competent. I think you can do that. Yeah. But it is difficult. I think this constant reflection on how you treat yourself is needed. Treat yourself as if you're someone you really love.
But the norms makes it worse.
The norms make it
there
worse.
Are a lot of,
yeah,
there are a lot of prejudice.
They do. I agree.
If I may speak again, when you were saying about the teaching evaluations, I just wanted to share this experience because I taught a module, exactly the same module, but two different cohorts. One was electronic engineers, and in my department that's like 98% men. And in the other one was for ITO, which is IT for organizations, which the gender balance is much better. It's about 26% women. And I got much worse teaching evaluations from the electronic course. And I pretty much taught the same way. Maybe I had unconscious biases too. Maybe I was projecting a bit more insecurity, but they were less generous with their feedback. So, yeah.
The thing about course evaluations is that female students give female teachers worse course evaluations. It's not about male students going to the female faculty. It's both female and male value men higher.
Hi, I'm Shatabdi. I'm a software developer. I have two questions, actually. How do you tackle a situation when you are in a group and you are having a discussion and you are being cut out by other male colleagues of yours, one? And second is, how do you tackle a situation? You have been into many conferences, and I don't know whether you have faced this situation, whether you feel that you're not being wanted, you don't deserve, as you said, you don't belong here, and someone makes you feel that you're not wanted. It's not for you. So how do you tackle these two situations? Thank you.
This being excluded from the, like treated like you're invisible, that's one of the harassment techniques too. And it's really difficult to try to be included when you're not included at all. I'm one of the experts at the national e-health expert group at the in the government, and in this group, believe me, I am, compared to the others, much more experienced, and I've had so much difficulties in getting my voice heard that I've tried different strategies. I was so angry on the way home from one of these meetings that I didn't really know what to do with myself, because these elderly men, they talked, they just waffled. They didn't know what they were talking about, and I knew they were wrong, and I knew from my research that they are wrong completely, and I did not manage to get my message through at all. So for the next meeting, I tried to work out a strategy. I put down in my computer a list of things that I try to work with. And the first one is try to make it a bit more formal. So I asked the one chairing the discussion when we entered the room, maybe this time we could have like a formal list of who's going to talk, so that everyone needs to have a possibility to be heard. And the second one was to really, when they interrupted me, I really said, no, I'm going to talk and say what I had to say. It's your turn next. You are on the list too. So formality can help. But at the first meeting, I didn't know what to do. So I made a plan between the meetings, and the second one was better. But I don't have all the answers of this, and I'm not successful in all the situations at all. And sometimes I'm really frustrated.
So just going back to the imposter syndrome, when I was a young child, I hated drama class because it wasn't serious or scientific and stuff like that. But about 15 years ago, I realized that if I want to combat this imposter syndrome, then you need to sort of act. So then I realized we need theater skills. So when I go and present and seem confident, I'm not confident, but I pretend I'm confident, and it works really well, and people think I'm confident. Then eventually, the positive circle gets in. So it's just a slight
There's a
comment on
very good TED talk on that. That's called "Fake It Till You Make It." Yeah, and I can recommend that one. Act is as if you were confident. Act like you're the person you want to be, and you'll become that one eventually.
So in general, I'm very interested in this subject, increasing women in tech, and I've read a lot about the psycho-sociological impacts and things, and I'm actually, I think, pretty good at calling out men when I notice they're maybe saying, oh yeah, but women are less technical, and then I say something like, oh no, but you mean sales people are less technical, and it just happens that the women are sales, something like that right now. But I find I almost never call out women when they do the same thing. And I definitely notice that a lot of women will put themselves down, or they'll kind of giggle, and maybe they're not technical women, maybe they are, but they'll say something like, oh yeah, of course, because we're girls, we just don't know how to do this. And I was wondering if you have any experience or advice for how to kind of approach a woman to kind of say, oh, well, maybe you don't mean it that way, maybe there's something else you can say.
I think it's really a difficult situation. I know that research on children in Sweden have shown that they recorded how teachers talk to boys and girls. This is it's called Tittmyran. It's an old book. I think it's 20 years old at least. They recorded them, and it made them very visible that you treat boys and girls differently, and they came up with an action plan themselves on how to deal with boys and girls. For example, I remember the boys part because I have boys. Talk in full sentences, use adjectives, try to encourage boys to talk about feelings, etc. They had a few things, and then they had an equal list with girls. The first one was encourage girls to run and jump and scream and take up space in the room, etc. And then they tried to work with this in a mixed group. And then after a few months of work, they recorded again to see the difference. And there was no difference. They did not succeed in treating, they did not succeed in changing the way they treated boys and girls in this setting at all. So they decided to split them. And then they could see that it was more possible for them to do it. So how do you treat boys and girls in the classroom equally? I think you need to be aware, but I think it's really difficult not to fulfill the norm. We need to work with it. It was a long answer saying, yes, I agree, it's really difficult.
Thank you.
I think there are no more questions, so thank you very much.
May I ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so now that there is so much positive, positive discrimination towards women, sometimes we get scholarships or things like that just because we are women. And then when we get asked, like, how did you achieve that? It's hard to, but it's necessary to say, I got that because it was for women only. How do you address that so people don't think that you don't really deserve it?
It's the same situation as Marta in Iceland when she became a board member a few years ago, just due to the fact that they changed the law. I think it's really difficult. How do you address it? So I think that trying to say that, yes, I got advantages because I'm a woman, but men has gotten advantages for generations now. So now it's our turn.
Thank you.
Thank you.